Welcome to Punky's Pro Wrestling. I have a list of my own ideas for Dark Side of the Ring. Roddy Piper, there's a lot to cover there. Was he a wonderful man? Yes. Was he a family man who put his wife and children first? Absolutely. Did he have problems with substances and alcohol? Absolutely, and he would tell you that. Curt Hennig and his death. Buzz Sawyer. I just thought of another one. Blackjack Mulligan and Kendall Windham. Well, here, let me go through these and tell you about each one. Okay, Roddy Piper obviously had substance issues. He had alcohol issues. It's more of a story of redemption. He battled cancer and defeated it, and then ultimately he died in his sleep from his heart. Could definitely be a good episode. Curt Hennig and his death, which I understand was from cocaine. Blackjack, although I also heard it was a genetic heart condition, so I don't know. Blackjack Mulligan and Kendall Windham. Father and son who got into a counterfeit money scheme. Hulk Hogan. That goes without saying. There's a lot to unpack there. Buzz Sawyer. Alcohol, drugs, craziness. More drugs than alcohol, though, I guess. And utter craziness. Hercules Hernandez. Steroids, drugs. Miss Elizabeth died of an overdose. Lex Luger, that's more of a redemption story. The Ring Boy scandal. For those of you who don't know, there was a scandal involving ring boys. Boys that used to take, belts and outer ring gear back to the back. And they were young teenagers. And now there is a lawsuit pending over the abuses that they've alleged to have sustained. I can't say that they did, although I believe their allegations. So Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's a mess. And he brought his mess right into the ring. Drugs. Just coming to the ring completely and utterly loaded. To the point that he couldn't perform. Things like that. Rick Rude. Heart attack having to do with steroids and that sort of thing. Although Rick Rude's also a heartwarming story because even though he was Rick Rude, and he did all the fancy dancing and the Rude Awakening kiss and all that, he was actually a very loving family man. His wife was his world and his kids, and he was not the character at all. So that would be interesting to also delve into, along with what killed him. Louis Spicolli, that was just sad, awful. They did do Crash Holly. I believe they did Crash Holly. I was plain sad. Test and his death with drugs. Also very sad. Oops. So yeah, I think those are excellent. Now, I know I want to go to matches and cards as well. I do understand that, but there's still plenty of stories to delve into. And it's funny, I just watched James Romero talk about this season, and he couldn't understand some of the shows because he wasn't familiar. Like Zach Gowen. It looks like a feel-good story, and I'm sure for the most part it is, but they also said he struggled with addictions, which he overcame. So it's also a redemption story. Missy Hyatt, obviously he understood that's a mess. I guess she's doing better now, which is great. He didn't understand the Big Boss Man. Big Boss Man is just a feel-good story with a sad ending. And they said that. But I have the benefit of having watched the Chris Jericho podcast before I watched that. And that's probably why I know this stuff. Paul Orndorff, he didn't know everything, you know. Again, I have the privilege of watching the Jericho before this. So, excuse me. Paul Orndorff's story is very sad. The TNA is going to be in-depth and very interesting. Rick Wilson, the Renegade. He understood that one. Like I said, he had a couple, Mr. Wonderful, Zach Gowen, that sort of thing that he was confused about. Which I do understand. Because as a fan, you might not know what happened, you know? They could do one on, excuse me, Gorgeous George, for sure. George Wagner. They could do one on Pat Patterson. Just looking at others that they've done. And also just looking at those stories. For those of you not familiar, Pat Patterson was a gay wrestler back in the 50s and 60s, and later became a very prominent part of the World Wrestling Federation, later the WWE. Backstage, it had to be awful to be a gay wrestler in that time period and do that. They always say he was the first openly gay wrestler. He wasn't open back then. He couldn't be and survive in the world of wrestling. You know, and it would be an interesting story to tell. And I bring up Gorgeous George because he had a very severe alcohol problem, and because his character was the first of its kind, of a real wrestling character, you know, what we've come to know as wrestling characters. He started that. I know that they did Terry Gordy, but they could do the whole Freebirds. Because they broke ground in many ways. Music on the way to the ring, they started that. They made it mainstream, I should say. Because there were places here and there that would do it, but they made it mainstream in the big leagues, you know. And all the problems that they had with drugs and alcohol and all of that. And of course, Buddy Roberts' battle with throat cancer and his ultimate passing. You know, how did Jimmy Garvin become part of it? And you could talk about all of their lives, but you could talk about, like, you know, Jimmy's been married for 50 years to his longtime manager of LA, who was his wife before she became his manager, you know. Sunshine, Patty. And just all of that. Let me know what you think. This video, the last time I did this video, really got the comments going, and I so appreciate that. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week on Punky's Pro Wrestling.